And so to be absorbed in the silence, be absorbed in the silent self. Underneath the moving, changing play of the world, the moving, changing landscape of consciousness is a wide open, eternal field of silence. The silence of eternity. That which has never become, that which always is. The true essence nature that is shared by all beings. The one wide open field of being. This silence, this silent being, is not an object. It is not a thing. It is entirely no thing. No thing. And so we cannot personify, objectify this silence, this being. We cannot make it an experience that someone has. We can do nothing with it. We cannot reach it with the mind. It is in the absence of mind that silence is known. And yet silence is the true nature. Just this in itself reveals the illumination of who you are in truth, the illumination of true nature, revealing that you are not the moving, changing, that you are not an object, not a thing, that you are the emptiness, the openness of being, the simple silence that is before everything. That the silence is not a teaching, does not have a lineage, it does not belong to anyone, it is not of the world, it is before the world is created in the mind. And so to know this silence is to know the freedom of who you are in truth. And it is such a surrender to let go into the remembrance of this profound silence, because it is not an experience, cannot be understood, cannot be grasped with the mind. It is a simple attunement and remembrance. A simple attunement and remembrance of true nature. That everything that we are longing for is in this silence. The silence is your true self. The silent self, the silent being, the silent glory, the silent radiant light of all that is, has never moved, has never changed. One silence, one simple silence. That silence itself is majesty. That silence itself is utter joy. Not joy as an experience in the way the mind imagines. This is the truth, is that the mind cannot imagine what is reality, because the mind, it personifies everything. It takes everything through the realm of its understanding and tries to understand it according to the human experience. It makes characters out of things like silence and God. It makes characters out of everything. Makes characters out of Divine Mother. Gives these ideas that there's some kind of person, some kind of entity, some kind of relationship that you can have. But it is not so. Just the idea of creating a relationship is a subtle way of keeping division in place. It is when the relationship dissolves and the realization of just one brings the remembrance of this silence, this incredible silence that is before everything. And the great glory is that we can access the knowing remembrance of this silence right here now, even if it can feel like it's not firmly established and that there is a wavering back into identification with mind. Just to know this silent sanctuary, the unmoving, that which has never become, the formless, the unmanifest, the uncreated. How can the mind possibly imagine what it is to be uncreated? And it all starts here, in this moment, here now, in the silence of the heart, the silence of being, the great glorious opening to openness itself that we all have access to here now, this moment undivided, this moment without fragmentation, this moment without guilt, this moment without shame, this moment without doubt, this moment just being yourself, the one self, the impersonal self. And this is to love yourself. To love yourself is not of the world. It is not about taking action to make the me feel better. It is not about making healthy, delicious cakes and taking a warm bath. That is not self-love, right? As lovely as an experience as it could be. To truly love yourself is to drop into the revelation of silence, to drop into the love that you are, this wide open field of grace, to just stop the addiction to doing, stop the addiction to misery, stop the addiction to everything that we are addicted to, and just be here now in this moment, to just be here before everything you are. To just be here to be still and to know that who you are in truth is this, in the stillness, in the silence. You are the simple being that just is, a wide open, infinite heart that is the one self, the one radiant glory. We cannot find this truth that we are longing for in the play of the world. We cannot find this truth in the mind's meanderings. We can only find this truth in the silence. The simple presence of being, I am. I am. That I am Johnny, I am Katie, I am a man, I am a woman, I am a genderless being. That I am a mother, I am a father, I am a sister, I am a brother. I am a daughter, I am a son. I am a doctor, I am a banker, I am a road sweeper, I am a baker. All completely irrelevant. Does the silence have any identification? Does the silence have an agenda? Does the silence play any roles? Are we truly willing to come to the formless remembrance? We do not know silence with the mind. We know silence in the absence of mind. Even though this silence is always here, it is as if when silence really comes, it just takes you over. Yes, in truth, it is dawning from the inside, but it is like a infinite, unbounded blanket, deep and still, and somehow reverent, majestic, holy, not in a way that can be explained, but in the way it brings you to your knees, brings the end of the me, end of the story, the end of the addiction to the play. The stop, the silent presence, the presence that just is. Everything is reconfigured when we are resting, absorbed in the silence of being. Everything is reconfigured so we can see clearly that nothing is as it seems. We have been believing the play to be real, just like believing a movie that you have seen is real. We are so entangled in believing the story, any story, every thought that divides, is a story that carries you away from the silence of yourself. The play of life is fun, it's beautiful, and it's living itself. It is not the mind that we can know this truth through. When we are looking through the mind, we are looking from a me that sees separation and division, where there is protection and conditioning. What does silence see? What does silence know? Who are you as the silent self? What is here? Who are you without a story? Who are you without anything other than this silent presence? Who are you without a past? Who are you without the imaginings of a future? Who are you without trying to be present as presence itself? It is not to try to follow these words and make sense of them and have any kind of experience. The pointings, the invitations are immediate. They're not instructions. They are immediate possible revelations. And so it is to just receive, attune, but not to hang on to anything, not to create a concept or a thought out of anything, to just be so fresh, so present, so here, so real, so yourself, so true, so alive, so clear and honest and free. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. You are entirely free in this moment, here now, identified only with your true nature. Here, the love that you are is found in the openness, the unguardedness. That true love is not an experience that happens with another. True love is to feel the wide open freedom of being without separation, without protection. True love is the openness, the unguardedness, the unprotected, wide open, infinite field that you are. To not be looking for an experience that your mind is giving the instructions for. If we are looking for love according to the mind's idea of love, we will arrive in the openness and say, yep, no, nothing here that feels like love. Let's move on. Let's try and find something a little bit more exciting than this. Because the mind's idea of love is not true. It's partial. And the aliveness, the compelling aliveness of the direct experience of love has a certain quality to it. But it is all about how open is your heart. It's never about another. There's no one ever giving you love, however much you would like to believe that fantasy. Love is the openness, the unguardedness, the unprotected heart, knowing itself. a heart that is so wide open that it includes everything, everyone. It is the wide open field. Pure love is the field undivided, is your heart unprotected, because the heart unprotected is the infinite heart, the wide open heart of being, which is essentially the heart of God. And so as these words come, it is just to attune and open to the openness. Notice where there is a resonance, where you can recognize an attuned frequency of knowing. And notice too where there might be some stirring and the mind might take a little bit of a defensive position. All of it is perfection. The sharing is not in order to have some kind of experience. The sharing is to give you exactly what your heart is longing for. And if your heart is longing for the remembrance of this truth, then pick up the frequency and let it carry you into yourself. If there is something acting as an obscuration, then there could be a purification that could come. And that too would be exactly the same extraordinary grace of you opening deeper to your own self, opening through whatever could obscure, distract, pull the attention into identification and away from this deep silent field, to be absorbed in silence, to stop here now and just be. Nothing to do, nothing to understand, no instructions to follow, no experience to have, nothing to attain. The glory is you already are everything that you are longing for. The longing itself is the fulfillment. You already are everything you are longing for. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to be worthy or deserving in the way the mind imagines. And hallelujah for that. You already are everything that is longed for. It is just about looking in the right place. It is looking in the silence of the heart, looking inside, not outside. Looking inside yourself, you find yourself within yourself. You find yourself within yourself. Within the felt sense of being, you find yourself simply here, just being. This is the revelation. The revelation that is already here. It is just about being here with the revelation. Attuning to the fine frequency of the revelation. That to know yourself requires to be with yourself. To know God requires to be with God. But to know yourself is to know God, is to know love. All of these words, they are exactly the same because they are not entities. It's not an experience. It is the direct knowing of a frequency, a fine frequency, where your nervous system that is generally being attuned to a denser frequency, refines to recognize the fine frequency and attunes to reality, attunes in the silence, in the fineness of silent absorption, attunes to reality. Every fiber of your being responds. Recalibration happens. It is as if dullness and discordance and the frequency of dullness and discordance is suddenly magnetized towards this fine frequency. And the whole structure of your being recalibrates and attunes to start resonating at a finer frequency. Undoing the discordance, the patterns of limitation, the patterns that create addiction, the patterns of protection. The whole system recalibrates to release the discordance and start resonating at a finer frequency. A frequency where you have no past, a frequency where you have no story, a frequency where you have no obligations. You have no need to explain yourself. You have no need to be anything for anyone. Your sole responsibility is to be yourself. Your sole responsibility is to remember the divinity that you are, the purity that you are, to remember the glorious innocence that you are, that you are not the character you have believed yourself to be, the character that is somehow lacking, somehow unworthy, unlovable, somehow broken, possibly even unfixable, somehow riddled with guilt and shame, the whole deep belief that I have done something wrong, there is something missing in me, I have been abandoned or rejected. What is actually wrong with me? Right? That deep question. What is actually wrong with me? Why is life so hard? Why can't I get it? What is actually the problem here? And the truth, of course, is that you are not a problem to be fixed. And as long as you are resting in the belief that you are, and that there is something wrong with you, then you will keep chasing your tail, riding the merry-go-round, and believing that the play that is created by your mind is some kind of reality, like some kind of game of life that you have to win or succeed in, when the truth is that it is a game that you cannot win. It's set up that way, and it's set up that way out of the most incredible kindness. It's set up that way so your disappointments lead you to ask the deeper questions and to carry your inquiry into the silence of the heart. There's a reason why you cannot succeed in the world. That is because the world does not exist, not in the way that we think it does. It is a creation of the mind. And if the mind that is held in the belief in separation is creating a world, it will create a world that is born out of separation. It will create a world that is born out of the belief in limitation. It will create a world appearance that is born out of the belief in a play of opposites. And it will be a game of comparison, and it will be a game of dancing in that play of opposites, always trying to be the good opposite, right? And not the bad one. Trying to be the winner, not the loser. Trying to be the good, the goodie, not the baddie. Trying to get it right, not get it wrong. That is the game of life as created by the mind that believes in division, believes that I am separate, that believes that I've got to do everything I can to fix myself and win this game, be victorious, be successful, so that I can prove myself. I can prove that I am worthy, that I am lovable, that I am deserving. I can prove myself, right? What an extraordinary, miserable delusion to be caught in. And alleluia for the possibility of remembrance. Alleluia for the possibility of just stopping. And instead of perpetuating the story of needing to fix, needing to change, needing to work harder, that we come to the realization that you can just walk right off the stage, walk right off of the stage, can walk right out of my life and into reality, right here now, in your own heart. You can realize reality in the heart, right here now, in the presence of being. And you can know yourself, be yourself, and you can see clearly from a true perspective. What does it look like when you walk out of your life and off of the stage? What happens when you look upon everything that you have thought you were? You just see that you are not what you thought you were, that you're not the person, you're not the character, you're not bound. There's no suffering, there's nothing to seek for. It all just comes to an end. And yet life is still living itself. It's just living itself without the burden of the suffering, without the burden of all of the ideas that we have about how to live life, what we have to do, what we should do, what we must do. Life is living itself without all of those agendas that are overlaid upon life by the mind, right? In a way, the game looks exactly the same, but the rules are different. All bets are off. No rules, right? We realize that it's the mind that has created the rules, the mind that believes in separation, the mind that believes in division that has created the rules out of a sense of lack, out of a sense of deficiency. And so right here now, in the presence of being, this simple moment is the moment to stop, to not try to understand anything, but just to be here so fully, so present, so awake, so alive in the presence of being, that there is this frequency of remembrance that starts to dawn in the heart, a knowing, a recognition, a remembrance that this is who you are in truth, that you are not bound by stories and roles. You are not bound by anything. There's nothing that holds you limited except your own mind. And in the presence of being here now, you can observe the mind and know that you are free of what you are observing. As the observer of mind, you are not bound by mind. As the observer of the character, then you have to be wider, bigger, vaster than the character. What are you really observing? An image of someone, right? Where are you watching from? And what about this observer, this observing awareness? Is this observing awareness touched by anything that it is observing? Is the awareness identified with anything that it is aware of? Can you notice how awareness is completely free of the objects of experience? That awareness is just open and free, untouched. And in this recognition, there is a sense of relaxation, a sense of freedom. This is the reality of who you are, the simple being that just is. Cannot be expressed or explained in a way that the mind can understand, because it is in the stop of the mind that remembrance comes. In the stillness, in the silence, absorbed in the silence. We cannot give an explanation to the mind of how life goes on without a me. We cannot give an explanation to the mind that will make sense, because it is the mind itself that we are opening to be free from, that we are remembering freedom from mind, that we are not the mind, we are not divided, that we are naturally whole, we are naturally pure innocence, we are naturally guiltless, we are naturally free. And here there is joy with no cause. There is happiness as true nature. There is a certain awe and wonder at your own magnificence. The magnificence of silence, the majestic joy of silence. How compelling it is to fall into yourself, into the silence. There is nothing to do. The only doer is the silence itself. Cannot be understood. It is just about being, and in the silence, the discovery is all here. The silent one, the only doer. That everything is arising as a musing, everything that plays of life, as life is a musing, arising out of the silence, and yet never truly becoming anything or anyone, never leaving itself. The principle never leaves itself. It doesn't actually fragment and become. It doesn't become many. It never leaves itself. And it is the remembrance that you are one with the principle of illumination, the principle of divinity, of wholeness itself. You are absolutely one with the divine principle. You have never been divided in any way. You are not a separate individual person with a life that is mine. That is the dream, and the dream is a dream of separation. It is to return the dream, return the imagined creation to the creator, to its source, to the silence. Return everything to the silence. Return all that you have imagined yourself to be to the silence. Return to the source, where you know nothing. Return to the stillness and know the truth of who you are. Return to the source and find the glory of God is always here. Return to the source and find the mother of all that is right here. It's not a happy family that's waiting for you. It is a fine frequency that is before everything, before the whole idea of people and things. It's too much of a stretch for the mind to imagine. And yet, curiously, the heart knows, because the heart already is. You already are everything that is longed for. And the longing itself is the frequency that carries you into the remembrance. And that is why we would say that the longing itself is the fulfillment. And so just to come to the longing, to really open to the wild aliveness of the longing of the heart, and with all that you are to say yes to the longing, without even really knowing what is longed for. What could that even be? Could be a sense of longing for love, a longing for God, a longing for the mother, a longing for truth, a longing for freedom. But what happens where words collapse? Boom, silence. So we let go of the ideas of what we're longing for, and we open to just the frequency of the longing. Because the longing, in a way, is the invitation. It is, we could say, God's longing for you. It is the wholeness that you are, longing for you, the principle, the magnetic force of the principle pulling you into the remembrance of what you are in truth. Because you are not divided, you feel it as a longing, you feel it as a pull, a magnetic force, or you feel it as some kind of desire for things in the cruder, denser sense, right? It's the same. That longing is the longing, it's the force, the power, the glory of divinity It's actually the force, the power of pure devotion in truth. It's divinity itself in utter devotion to its own divinity. And that is a force of such absolute reverent devotion that it maintains its integrity by never dividing. This is like the principle of illumination, right? The light that never dims, never divides, a wholeness that is always whole, never diminishes, the wholeness that can appear as many without ever dividing. You can take out of wholeness the idea of 7 billion or more people on seeming planet Earth, and wholeness is still whole. It has not been divided. The principle does not divide, because the appearance of the world and the 7 billion or so people are just musings, They're just musings in the heart of divinity. The heart of divinity does not divide itself into many. The diversity is never created in reality. It is created in the mind. And it is the reflection of the mind that feels to be divided, the mind that feels to be separate. And because one feels to be separate, it imagines everything else to be separate. It imagines that I'm separate, then all of these others are separate. So as soon as you believe in separation, there is an other. Animals, bugs, trees, everything feels to be separate, right? Until you remember the truth of who you are, you return to the whole entire principle of divine light. You return to the remembrance of wholeness in the heart, and then you see no other. You see nothing divided. You're just the light of awareness that's aware of appearance, but never dividing, never becoming. Becoming itself is imagined in the mind. So great glory. Alleluia. The heart is on fire with a celebration. The celebration is the remembrance that the victory is already here. Love is already victorious. There never has been a division. There's no battle to be won. Love, love, love is the winner of the game. Love can never be the loser. Not in reality. Love never leaves itself. Love just loves itself. And so this is why to know the self-love, the love of the self, is to know yourself as the love that never leaves itself, the love that never could leave itself, and the love that has never left you. You have never been left by love. You have never left love. It's extraordinary to behold. The reality is that love has never left itself, and you are the love that has never left itself. That who you have imagined yourself to be is perhaps one that has been divided from love. But all along, you have been the love, and somewhere in there, the heart has known, in the silence, in the stillness, the love, the glory. of love that you are is still intact and has always been intact. This is your radiant innocence. This is your integral, natural innocence. This is the freedom from guilt and shame. And it is right here in the silence of the heart that knows that love has never been divided. Love has never left itself. The divine light has never split apart. Wholeness has always been whole. It is an absolute impossibility for wholeness to be anything other than whole. It is the principle of one without a second. The divine light that is ever bright, luminous brilliance, ever shining, and yet unlit. Just like the silence is the unstruck sound, the sound of all that is. It is the song of every heart that knows the oneness. When we enter the silent song in the heart, the knowing is here, waiting. The silent song, singing its eternal frequency, and attuning here in divine remembrance. Remembrance that you have never left yourself. That you have always been whole. You have always been free. You are not bound in any way by the mind's musings and meanderings. There is nothing in the dream that can keep you from yourself. Nothing can keep you from yourself. Nothing can keep love from love. And so whenever we find a place that seems to believe in division, seems to believe in separation, seems to believe in unlovableness, unworthiness, in the bad, the wrong, the evil, we return every thought that is divided to the source. We return every thought that is comparing, protective, to the source. We stop, we open, and remember the truth in the silence. Absorbed in the silence is to be absorbed in the glory, to be absorbed in remembrance, and to allow the absorption to refine the nervous system, which is the consciousness, and the refinement of the nervous system, the consciousness, is where the fine frequency of your silent knowing, singing its reverent song, recalibrates and cancels out all of the patternings of discordance, recalibrates and cancels out all of the patterns of protection and conditioning, recalibrates and irons out all the wrinkles that give the belief in separation and limitation. a fine frequency in the silence that is pure power, the power to bring the knowing of the reverent truth alive in your heart. Remember the silence, the stillness, the unmoving presence of being that you are. Remember that you have never left the glory of divine reality. Remember that you have never left yourself, that you have never left love, that you have never left the glory of God. You have always been one with divinity. And in the silence of the heart, the remembrance of innocence, the knowing is here of your own purity, that it is not about making what you think you have done wrong right. It is not about curing the ills of the mind by fixing and bringing in new ideas. It is about allowing the discordant patterning to collapse into the light, into the principle of light. The principle of illumination shines upon the discordance, and the shining light of awareness brings consciousness into the light so that the discordance and holding patterns can release and unravel into the remembrance. Weave the fibers and threads back into the tapestry of one. And the silent song sings on. The silence of eternity brings the remembrance of what always has been and whatever will be. And the glory is in your heart. The glory is in the silence of the heart that knows. Immersed in the silence. The spell is broken. The code is cracked. Reality is seen. Clear vision dawns. Bliss flows. And the nectar is so nourishing. It nourishes every cell and fiber of your being. Reprogramming, repatterning, so that the seeing gets clearer. The remembrance refines, because the remembrance is in the nervous system, in the consciousness itself. It's not in the mind. And yet part of the whole unfolding is that the mind consciousness that is a denser frequency itself refines. All of consciousness refines and refines and refines to remember the essence nature. We return from the mind in separation and our entanglement with the collective mind. We return to wholeness, the undivided whole. Pure mind, clear mind, a universal mind. where you are no longer the one who is thinking, you are being thought. So it seems like thinking still happens, but you are not the thinker. You are being thought. It is not personal. The thoughts do not belong to you. Everything is clarifying. Everything is refining. The consciousness itself is remembering its own purity. Patterns of limitation are unraveling and falling away. And the frequency gets finer, and the frequency gets finer, and the remembrance deepens, and the light gets brighter, and the light gets brighter. And yet, of course, in truth, what is already whole is already whole and bright and clear and true. It is like a thawing out from being frozen in the idea of separation, thawing out and melting, dissolving back into the source, back into where you have come from, what you are one with, dissolving into true belonging, to follow the longing into the source, to find out that you have imagined that you are longing for God, but actually you are feeling God's longing, the force, the magnetic field, force field of pure devotion, the integral whole flowing within itself, light dancing, so bright, so brilliant, so luminous. And this light is what you are made of in truth. That you are not the density and heaviness of the imagination. And this is why we would speak. You are not the mind. You are not the body. You are not the person. You are not the divided individual. Cannot imagine with the mind what is possible. It is the remembrance that is right here in the silence, in the stillness, in the light of wholeness, the integral whole, the glory itself, radiantly shining. And so it is just to attune and recognize where there is a resonant remembrance, where you can feel the aliveness, and just to be carried, just to melt into the heart of God. Melt into the silent heart of love. Melt into the silent heart of self. Into the light. Into the principle of illumination itself. luminescence, brilliance, radiance, shining. The bliss of being, the frequency of the bliss of being, refining the nervous system, delivering nourishment of the best kind, the kind that refines and clarifies, carries you deeper into the profundity of what silence really is, absorbed in the silence.